I'm just gonna do something easy today. Hi chat, how are y'all doing? Hopefully y'all are doing fine. I'm just gonna be relaxing over here until something comes across my mind. What was that? What's going? Oh, I know what dropped. That's my skyline. Oh well, I gotta go get it later. How you doing, Simi? Hopefully you're doing fine. I'm just trying to just relax for the night. I really don't know what to stream. I just need something to do. Let's see here. If anything, I do want to do something as far as I'm akin to do. I'm gonna need to drink some water. Why is it all in there? Oh god. It's so hard. I'm so parched. Remember to hydrate, kids. I know, you gotta go to sleep. You have to go. I heard you from the shower. Thank you. Or just been chilling anyway tonight. I really don't have anything much to do. Gotta ease myself down. I'm gonna watch some Motorsports videos. How about that, chat? I'm gonna go watch some Motorsports videos. If I could get the window capturing. Let's see here, properties. There you go. Oh god, I'm not gonna play Hot Milk, bro. My Borderlands doesn't feel like Borderlands anymore. Oh, that's funny. Let's watch that.
This is Firestone. It may not look like much to the average gamer, but if you played the original Borderlands, it's iconic. If you're like me, you can hear this footage. The ambient buzzing and reverberations, the rhythmic sauntering of the lonely guitar strums, the thrumming of hand drum synthesizers, all accompanied by the sound of
Why is
occasional
this a
roaring
thing?
skags and stray gunfire. That's how powerful the atmosphere of Borderlands was in 2009. The starting town is so ingrained into the minds of Borderlands fans that the mere visual of it is enough to instantly transport us back to a whole new world. Now, let's fast forward a decade and a half. This is the Launchpad. On paper, it shares a lot of the same characteristics of Firestone. It's a modest town that's a foothold for the Crimson Resistance and the first hub town you encounter. It's aptly named because it's the start of your journey in Borderlands 4, and yet it's not nearly as immersive. Ironically, the town that launches the story and has a full community of people feels so lifeless compared to the original Firestone, which was occupied by a single doctor and random robots. I couldn't help but question why I felt this way. By all accounts, the Launchpad should feel more like a living, breathing town, and yet I always found myself more drawn to Firestone for reasons I found difficult to articulate. And if I couldn't articulate why Firestone felt more immersive, was I even right to feel that way? Well, maybe I was. After all, I'm not alone. A lot of longtime Borderlands fans feel like something is missing in recent titles, even venturing as far as to say that Borderlands 4 doesn't really feel like Borderlands anymore. But it's hard to know how much we should take these observations to heart. It's pretty easy for longtime fans to be stuck in the past. So, are we all perhaps just blinded by nostalgia? Well, I ruminated on this a lot, trying to think of what made Borderlands Borderlands beyond the skill trees and loot. And I came to the conclusion that we aren't wearing rose-tinted glasses. Instead, Gearbox has been slowly but surely eroding the atmosphere of the iconic series that we have all grown to love. And the difficulty in describing why it feels a little off is because it isn't due to one change in particular. Instead, it's the culmination of many small changes in direction, like a car taking a bunch of slight wrong turns that eventually led it far away from its original destination. So in this video, I'd like to examine why the magical atmosphere of Borderlands has faded and whether the course can truly be corrected. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting from the beginning. The original Borderlands is kind of an odd title. It was such an instant hit upon release, selling over 2 million copies in just over 2 short months, and yet the base game itself feels oddly incomplete. Mostly because the skill trees, especially by modern standards, are pretty basic and the story is extremely bare bones. Because of this, it may be hard for people newer to the franchise to understand why it was such a hit. Well, it was a combination of things, but I think one of the biggest parts of it was the presentation. At the time, there was nothing quite like it, and to this day, I still don't think anything quite is. When you boot up the game, it instantly makes a statement. It greets you with an opening cutscene that showcases a uniquely striking comic book art style and a high-octane car sequence that leads you into believing that the game takes place in a vibrant world teeming with character and life. Yet, when you begin the tutorial, you realize that Pandora is anything but. It's a brutal wasteland where everything goes to die. Those who willingly traveled to Pandora to chase ancient legends were considered foolish because of how difficult it is just to get by, and nearly everything in the game supports this. When you get off the bus, your first view is of a barren desert, and you're immediately greeted by the revving of bandit engines and stray gunfire. And just like that, the tone is instantly set. Pandora is hostile. Every other aspect of the game design continues to support this. Almost every time you encounter another living being, it tries to either shoot you, stab you, or eat you. And the few times you meet people who are friendly, they just seem downtrodden. Meanwhile, every inch of the planet you explore unearths more and more swaths of Mad Max-inspired barren wasteland. The songs in the background set a similar mood. Like I alluded to earlier, the meandering guitar licks of Welcome to Firestone narratively convey that you are a survivor with a long road ahead of you. Other more atmospheric songs such as Enter Skag Gully and Traversing the Deep provide a similarly eerie and lonely, yet oddly introspective mood that one would expect from a lone traveler on a lengthy journey. And as you progress, the journey feels more and more like an uphill battle as the soundtrack periodically becomes even more tense while you're working your way through hordes of enemies and long elaborate set pieces such as Headstone Mine and Crom's Canyon. And best of all, there's space. Because there's minimal dialogue, you're able to just wander around and soak this in. Your train of thought isn't interrupted every few seconds with how important or dangerous some plot detail is. Sure, there are occasional moments where characters in the story outright tell you how perilous Pandora is, but those interjections are infrequent. They aren't as necessary as later titles because every minute detail of the presentation communicates this. The game doesn't need to spell out for you that Pandora is dangerous. It shows you by having you live it. But Pandora isn't just doom and gloom. In a way, that opening cutscene, whether intentional or not, was the perfect mission statement of what Borderlands is about. Despite being in desolate Badlands, the underlying soundtrack is to the upbeat tune of Ain't No Rest for the Wicked, and the art style makes everything seem so lively. And that's when we realize that, sure, Pandora is bleak and oppressive, but it's also beautiful. According to Randy Pitchford, this juxtaposition is what Borderlands has always been about. In an interview with All Out Gaming, ironically in promotion for Borderlands 4, Randy goes into detail of what a Borderland is. I'm going to avoid putting direct footage and audio in this due to potential copyright issues, but in it, he states that Borderlands has always thrived on contrast, existing in a no man's land between an RPG and a shooter, a comedy and a drama, and realism and surrealism. But I think he neglected to mention another key component, the juxtaposition of desolation and beauty. Every aspect of Borderlands 1 was thoroughly crafted to be bleak and oppressive, but somehow it's one of the prettiest games I've ever played. You wouldn't expect that from a world composed of desert and junk, but somehow it is. There are numerous stunning views you encounter wandering your way through the landscape, but they don't feel deliberate. Instead, they feel like a discovery, a small reward for undergoing a lonely, difficult journey. And this carried over to other aspects of the game. It's tough to believe a dump of a town like Firestone or New Haven could feel cozy, but in the context of Borderlands, it was. Due to the ruthless nature of Pandora, a small settlement where you weren't immediately attacked on sight felt like a rare respite where you could relax and unwind. And similarly, the moments where you experienced genuinely positive interactions, such as meeting the altruistic TK Baja or wholesome Scooter, were made all the sweeter because you lived in a world that constantly showcased humanity at its worst. So overall, the original Borderlands, despite having very minimal story, still expertly crafted a narrative. You were a lonely wanderer trying to make it in a horrible universe. Everything from the visuals to the sound design to the characters you met supported this. If anything, the lack of story helped in this regard, as it allowed you to truly soak in the unique atmosphere. Your time on Pandora felt like a deeply personal and introspective journey, having just enough glimmers of beauty in the form of the occasional stunning vista or wholesome social exchange to keep you motivated in your quest to crawl out of the darkness. Going forward, this was Borderlands' DNA. Well, until it wasn't. One of the biggest complaints about Borderlands upon release was a lack of plot. And while I can't say that I disagree that the writing needed to evolve, this began a subtle shift in focus for the Borderlands franchise. One where the designers put story at the top of the priority list and pushed it to the forefront of the gameplay instead of subtly weaving it into an immaculately crafted atmosphere. The series never reached this peak ambiance again, but at the very least, it didn't instantly deteriorate in the next iteration. It's obvious to see why Borderlands 2 is considered the golden child of the franchise. It has 6 popular vault hunters, a charismatic villain, tight writing, and awesome loot. But more relevant to this video, it still has a strong understanding of what made the atmosphere of the first game work. Having heard the feedback from many reviewers and gamers, Gearbox decided to switch up the environment of Pandora, opting to begin the game in the frozen tundra of the Windshear Waste. But despite not being immediately recognizable as Pandora visually, Gearbox applied enough of the principles of what worked in the first game to make it still feel like Borderlands. The opening sequence of Borderlands 2 is arguably even better at setting the stage for the brutal, Darwinian nature of Pandora. The Vault Hunters narrowly avoid their early demise, simultaneously bleeding out and freezing to death. And as they recover, they make their way through pounding snow and howling winds to Claptrap's humble refuge. Accompanied by the epic guitar strums that were quickly becoming a Borderlands staple, and the steady pounding percussion, Everything once again conveys that you're on a long, weary journey in a harsh land. But in their quest to focus on the story and hone in on the comedic groundwork they laid in the first game, cracks began to form on the surface, just a little. While there are a lot of memorable comedic moments, this is the first game where people begin talking in your ear frequently, causing the game to toe that delicate balance between desolation and beauty just a bit. For the most part, I still find the game funny, and I'm happy they decided to fully embrace humor as a part of the franchise's identity, but there are still moments of off-the-wall jokes that break immersion. That said, the game still puts the bleak nature of Pandora on full display, and is still a fairly grounded story about survival, so all in all, the formula continued to work. There might be multiple focuses besides atmosphere, but the packaging still delivered, only being a slight step down from its peak in the first game. When the series moved on to the pre-sequel, the implementation was similar. In fact, I find it a bit more refined than Borderlands 2. Although the tutorial sequence takes place on the Helios space station, the Vault Hunters quickly crash land onto the surface of Elpis. And like the two games before it, this sequence immediately sets the stakes for what this brand new setting would entail. The Vault Hunters nearly suffocate to death when they emerge from the moonshot, narrowly escaping death thanks to the intervention of Janie Springs. We then get to observe the familiar planetary hostility, with bandit clans, molten lava creatures, sugar rafts, and laser beams all threatening your existence once again. Gone are the gigantic sand dunes or familiar guitar twangs, replaced by large moon craters and retrofuturistic synthesizers, but the game still feels like Borderlands with a unique spin due to their attention to detail. And like Pandora, we still get reprieves from the violence and strangulation with stunning views and visits to the cozy outpost of Concordia. Plus, the story still adheres to the classic trope of Vault Hunters being hardened mercenaries operating in self-interest. The characters still talk a lot in your ear, but a good portion of that is Athena recounting her time with Handsome Jack, so it works for the most part. All in all, the setting, on paper, was wildly different, but the formula still felt familiar, demonstrating that Borderlands was capable of evolution without going substantially backwards in certain aspects of their game design. Overall, the first 3 iterations of Borderlands were fantastic for atmosphere. Unfortunately, Gearbox couldn't keep this streak up forever. Realistically, doing so would have been an impossible task. It's just a shame that the next game, in my opinion, was such a steep decline. Borderlands 3 is when the atmosphere started feeling like an afterthought. Now, I don't want to rag on Borderlands 3 too much because that's been done thousands of times and the game is really good overall. But it didn't adhere to some of the tenets of good ambiance that the previous titles did, and is when the series started feeling a bit off. I think a lot of this is apparent from the introduction. The first 3 games did a great job of putting you into a perilous situation, showcasing how the world you are occupying is agonizingly dangerous and why you might be in a bit over your head. But in Borderlands 3, you have much more agency. You kind of just show up, having answered a recruitment call from the Crimson Raiders, and are there, ready to kick ass and take control of a COV camp. And yes, obviously doing so is dangerous and threatening, but this introduction immediately sets a different precedent. You fight your way through some bandits, and everything goes off without a hitch. You beat the mini-boss and help establish a little outpost for the Crimson Raiders. There aren't any narrow brushes with death to establish the brutal nature of Pandora. And suddenly, your character isn't a survivor anymore. They're an action hero. The story only continues to reinforce this, putting you up against fearsome vault monsters and asking you to bail out multiple friendly faces while repeatedly telling you how strong and badass you are. And by doing so, they never adequately capture that environmental harshness that's needed to accentuate the moments of beauty. Plus, the game is by far the biggest offender of distracting you with the story. There is almost always someone talking, whether it's Lilith telling you what to do, Ava giving a whiny complaint, or the Calypso twins obnoxiously waving their live streaming personality in your face with their awful jokes. Someone is always demanding your attention, often in an extremely grating fashion, leaving you with little downtime for thoughtful introspection or moments to soak in your surroundings. And that's a shame, because the environments themselves are stunning. Say what you want about Borderlands 3's missteps, but the worlds Gearbox crafted for this game are beautiful. Pandora still has its stark dunes, Athena's has its lush misty mountains and monastic architecture, Promethea has its imposingly tall skyscrapers, and Sanctuary feels cozy. Each area is also accompanied by fantastic music that captures the feeling of Borderlands, adding a layer of mystery, intrigue, or tension when necessary. So, not everything was a misstep here. There was clearly a lot of groundwork laid in certain aspects of the game visually and sonically. It was just unfortunate that the story dictated a lot of the game's tone, and that was severely lacking. I will say though, the DLC packs for this game were all a fantastic return to form, offering intriguing stories that weren't over the top, and environments unique to the series that made me optimistic for the franchise going forward. Unfortunately, that optimism was unfounded. Borderlands 4, as it stands now, just feels off. Being what Gearbox calls a soft reboot of the series, Borderlands 4 brings us to a brand new planet, the planet of Kairos. And with that reboot, they lost a lot of what makes Borderlands feel like Borderlands. Gearbox seemed to at least be mindful of trying to keep the game cohesive with the series. You still have bandits, psychos, hostile wildlife, and some pretty views, but they don't feel natural. They feel like they were included to fill a checklist of quintessential Borderlands staples without having a deeper understanding of what really made a good atmosphere for the series. Let's look at the beginning. The opening tutorial does a great job of showcasing why the Timekeeper is dangerous. However, it doesn't do a good job of establishing why Kairos is dangerous. That might sound a bit contradictory, given that the Timekeeper controls Kairos, but there's a distinction. In the first 3 Borderlands titles, once you begin your journey and set foot on the planet for the first time, you see a barren hellscape of a world. But the first time you see Outer Kairos, it's lush, green, and teeming with life, inviting you with open arms to explore the Fade Fields. Sure, you're still quickly greeted by rippers and some angry wildlife, but the planet doesn't feel nearly as bleak or oppressive as a result. I'm sure this was a conscious decision by Gearbox to differentiate Kairos and begin a new era of Borderlands, given that the other 2 major zones are analogous to the arid Badlands and the Windshear Wastes. But it fails to set the tone of those harsh areas. As a result, the Fade Fields are just beautiful. There aren't any depressing moments to get a reprieve from, so when you arrive at a hub town like the launch pad, it just feels like a town. There's nothing to make it cozy or feel like a home away from home. Unfortunately, the issues don't end there. Borderlands 4 is open world, a decision that has drawn the ire of many longtime fans. And while I don't think having an open world is necessarily a death sentence for atmosphere, it certainly makes crafting a compelling one more difficult. As you drive through the world, there are swaths of nothingness, solely serving to be traversed for the sake of artificially enlarging the world. There are a few unique NPCs, enemies, or world events that make the open world feel alive. And while there are some unique collectibles, there are things like echo logs and puzzles, things that have existed in previous games. There's also very little to separate the zones as far as enemy variety goes. No matter where you are, you're still facing Order, Rippers, Creeps, Cratches, and everything else. This isn't exactly an issue unique to Borderlands 4, but it does contribute to making every zone feel like the same core experience with a different backdrop. But there's one more elephant in the room that I would like to address for Borderlands 4 that would also help make every zone feel distinct. It's brought up all the time, but I'd feel remiss if I didn't mention it. Overall, Borderlands 4 has the worst musical direction of the series. There are a couple serviceable tunes, but overall, the soundtrack is lackluster. Gone are the space western-inspired guitar twangs, replaced by generic rock guitars and industrial synthesizers. But worse, the actual deployment of the songs seems misguided. In older games, you would initiate travel to a new zone, see a brief loading screen, then be met with a new song tailored to that specific section of the map. In Borderlands 4, this doesn't always happen. As you drive through each zone, you rarely hear music at all. You hear it for cutscenes and certain story moments, but rarely when you are just exploring the giant sandbox Gearbox created. When you do hear it, the music usually isn't tailored to the zone. It's just generic combat music that's reused everywhere else. Overall, the music just completely misses the mark. It doesn't fit into the zone, and most of it doesn't fit into Borderlands entirely. And it's like this from the onset. Let's compare the first song you hear in each title, the main menu music. Let's start with Borderlands 1 and 2. Notice how these songs make you feel? They have mellow, lonely guitar twangs and some dissonance that make you feel like you have a long road ahead of you. Now, let's look at the pre-sequel. This one has a completely different soundscape with the spacey synths, but it still feels very Borderlands. That's because this song still follows the tenets of establishing the Borderlands feel. It's mellow, a little bit tense, and lonely. Borderlands 3 follows suit. First of all, banger. Second of all, this one, despite having no twangy guitars, still evokes the same feeling. It feels like a long, solemn, introspective journey. Now, let's listen to Borderlands 4. Do you see what I mean? This song doesn't convey a long journey. It's bold, epic, and triumphant. And once again, this early bit of groundwork shifts the focus from a tale of surviving a bleak world to being an action hero beating the bad guy. And as much as I want to push back and say that's not what Borderlands is about, unfortunately, nowadays, I think it is. Like I said earlier, I understand why the story had to evolve from the original Borderlands. But after the success of Borderlands 2, I think Gearbox thought that Borderlands had to be a story about a hero beating the villain going forward. But in doing so, they completely ignored the context of what made Handsome Jack work. Jack felt like a natural progression of the kill or be killed and exploitive nature of Pandora that was fully established in Borderlands 1, essentially showing what happens when someone takes those ideologies to an extreme to become the planet's apex predator. He felt like an extension of the harsh nature of Pandora, yet another obstacle that was a threat to your survival. So in later games, inserting a completely different villain archetype like Twitch streamer parodies felt like fitting a square peg into a round hole. That's why the banding together to defeat the Tyrant plotline works so much better in Borderlands 2. The threat was big enough to convince your playable psychopath that this was a direct threat to their survival. It was much more nuanced than hero beats villain. Though I will say, I do appreciate that Borderlands 4 at least seemed to recognize the direction the series was going in and fully embrace the heroic Vault Hunter, rather than try to play both sides. But enough about that. Let's talk about the future of the franchise. Is the series too far gone, or can Gearbox get it back on track? Well, to answer my clearly leading question, I think they can. They just need to remember their roots. Now, just prove that the DNA is still there. Gearbox just needs to trust it. If they do, maybe in another decade, I won't be able to hear just Firestone. Maybe I'll also hear what comes next. Anyways, that's all for this video. If you made it this far, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Interesting insight.
But it's a little underwhelming. It feels like he's one of the very early characters of the game, you know? All right, Iron Man. That's just a classic. That is the most classic 5 out of 10. And
Champion Buster online.
We'll do this one with the extra input. We'll judge it with the extra input. And this one's not bad. I think it's okay. I think it's a little underwhelming. Even with the additional super in the end, I give it like a 7. So I wish he did something cooler other than just like punch, 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 laser, you know?
All hands on deck. We assemble. You disassemble. Is this
I like... is this like Masenko? What is this? It's very familiar to Dragon Ball stuff. Somebody else does the Masenko. I like this one a lot. It's almost like Family Kamehameha. I'll give this one like an 8 out of 10. I think this one's very cool. Hulk time. Here we go.
I'll smack you!
That is a big juggernaut punch.
More fight now!
It does feel like it has a lot of impact, but I think that's also a 3 out of 10 kind of super. Wow. It's so Broly. It's insane. I like Super Broly, okay? So it's an 8. But still, I think it could be a little better. And
Everyone, go! Sorry!
there's the meteor. I'm gonna give that at least an 8.5. All right, Hulk Super isn't complete. Missing something at the end. Wait a minute, we're missing something. Oh. Well, that immediately goes to an 8.
Face my fury! The wisdom of Wakanda!
Okay, 7.5. Big finisher.
Please, brother, let me your strength. That walks with me. Face a proud soldier of Wakanda!
It's got a good finisher. I'll give it like an 8.5. And then
Spark stands with me.
bro, the Voltron lion or panther.
You're going down.
Damn.
I think I give this one also an 8.5. Oh yeah, modern day Zoids.
By the goddess!
You can create like a big second whirlwind instead of just one. It's okay. It's like a 5.
Shall be the
Okay,
last.
it's like a 5. Then
You must understand. I am not one woman, but the Mother Earth herself.
I'll also give it like an 8.
Lend me your strength. Get us out of here!
Damn.
A true team is unbreakable.
I'm giving that one a 9. I'm giving that one a 9 because she pulls the Lars. She pulls the whippy zippy electricity stuff. She's doing shit that I like from a different character, so she gets a 9. Magique.
Are you ready? Soul sacrifice.
Not bad. Another like 7 out of 10 sort of super. And then here's install version. It goes to like an 8.5. It goes to like an 8.5 because she cashes it out. And then I think it's another 7. I think I would have preferred like a big chop chop super.
Look out! 'Cause you ain't surviving this! Can't say I didn't warn ya!
I love the last hit of this attack, but I do not love that Wolverine turns into a Beyblade. I don't know if I love that. I'll give it like an 8, you know?
We can end this!
However, this one's amazing.
We team up! You're unbreakable!
Dude, the best part about this one, I think this is like a 9.5 for me personally. He has this thing and it's like, all right, team. And then he does this, he goes, let's go! He like chops the shit out of you. I'm like, yes. Yes. He gives this big guttural let's go. And I'm like, damn, bro.
This is it! Let's go!
I like it. That's the part. When he says let's go, it's a 9.5, okay? Danger.
Activating. Delete mode.
That is definitely a beam super. 5 out of 10 beam super.
Activating ultimate danger. It is unfortunate we have come to this. Be warned. Danger!
That's not bad. It's not bad. I'll give it like a 7.5. How about her assemble?
Captain code. Assemble.
Big claws.
Take this.
Constructing holograms.
cool. I was trying to figure out what she said. Chat, what is Shi'ar tech? Is that Apocalypse tech? Spider-Man.
My spider skills include this and this and this and this. Oh, and also this.
Not bad.
Perfect.
Not bad. I think it's a 7. Dude, this is the problem with half circle back forwards. Holy shit.
Ready.
I haven't played Strive in a while.
Spider needs rest. Hey, Penny. Race for
See, I like it that he pulls in a bunch of random bullshit from the stage. I think that's fun. 8.5, okay? 8.5 for like, it's just a big toss, but I get it. He pulls in weird shit from each stage. I think that's cool.
Let's go. You can't escape.
That one's okay. I'll give it like a 7.5. I'm not super sold on all the Spider-Man ones. I think I might end up liking his level 1 the most. All right, Punchy Woman. Not bad. It's like a 6.5. Not bad. And then,
Didn't study, Penny?
is this actually a command grab super?
You just think.
It's weird. I really don't like this one very much. Something about this super just like throws me off. I don't like it. I think it's like a 6. I feel like it could be cooler and more cinematic, and it's got weird cuts. Yeah, I've never liked it. The ending breaks the, like, there's weird. I don't know what to say.
You're not supposed
ever
to
since
flick
we
it,
first saw
then
it, it's
otherwise
kind of like an
kinda
odd super to me. Well, let's check this one out. I haven't seen this in a while, if not at all.
Friendships are true power. So is punching!
I like this more. Yeah, this is like a 7.5. It's the Stink Lord.
Now you're in my element. Elemental outlaw.
And yes, all of these beam supers effectively change depending if you have
Check out this sweet move. Elemental outlaw.
if you have different elements. So they freeze you or turn you on fire. Pretty much the ender is what changes on them. So it's like they're different, but not that much different,
Now you're in my
as you can tell. They're all like 5 out of 10s. They're beam supers. More utility than anything. All right.
Tired?
little girl and her robot. Sorry. Nice try. But I'm a living legend, kid.
This is a cool super, dude. This one's like a 9. I don't like Star-Lord in this game, like, because I saw too much of him in the betas, but it's like a 9 out of 10. I think it's very cool.
Let's dance. That's gonna hurt.
How's it?
Come in, Milano. Let's go. Engage weapons now. At this point, if you
I'd
were smart,
argue this might be my first 10, personally. I'd argue, because him jumping in like a ship and shit like that is pretty crazy. This one goes out there. I think it does things that I was not expecting, which is what I'm looking for. If it didn't have the ship, I wouldn't like it nearly as much. I don't know. For some reason, I think it's neat. I'll give it a 10. My first, like, kind of 10. I think it's very cool.
Look out!
He does the drill, yeah. Not bad. 6-ish drill? 6-ish drill? She can do it in the air too, right? Yeah. Yes, she can, okay. It's a Psycho Crusher. She literally has a Psycho Crusher. Spider Crusher.
Later, Faker! Command received! Go ahead! Imitate this!
Not bad. I think that one's like an 8. She's talking shit to herself.
Concentrated fire! Here goes!
Hold on, Chad. Give me a moment.